The golden stepsister who ruined my life until the camera caught everything. Growing up, my parents always told me that family is the only thing you can count on. They just forgot to mention that sometimes family is the thing you need to be counting the most, especially when they're standing right behind you with a pair of scissors. My stepsister, Jade, moved in when I was 12. From the very first day, she perfected this role, the fragile one. She had these big, watery eyes and a voice that sounded like it was constantly on the verge of breaking. My dad married her mom, and suddenly, my room was our room. My birthdays were our celebrations, and my mistakes, well, those were all mine. But her mistakes, those were always just a misunderstanding. The pattern started small. In 8th grade, I worked for 3 months on a science project. It was a model of the solar system with hand-painted planets and a motorized orbit. The night before it was due, Jade tripped while carrying a glass of grape juice. My Jupiter was soaked. My Saturn was crushed. She cried harder than I did. She wailed about how clumsy she was, how she felt terrible, how she just wanted to help me move it to the car. My dad patted her head and told me to stop glaring at her. He said, "Riley, she feels awful. Don't be so heartless. It was an accident." That was the phrase that defined my life for the next 15 years. It was an accident. In high school, it got worse. If I liked a guy, Jade would suddenly need tutoring from him. She'd show up at his house, uninvited, wearing my favorite sweater, the one she'd borrowed, without asking. She'd tell them how brave I was for dealing with my anger issues, or how she wished she could be as tough and independent as I was. By the time I was 22, I'd lost 3 boyfriends, 2 internships, and my mind, trying to explain to my parents that Jade wasn't sweet. She was a sniper. Then I met Mark. Mark was different. He was a software engineer, very analytical, very calm. He didn't fall for the damsel in distress act. The first time he met Jade, she tried her usual routine. She accidentally spilled a drink on his laptop bag. Mark didn't panic. He just looked at her, stone-faced, and said, "That's why I use waterproof casing, Jade. Do you need a napkin for your hand? You're shaking." I knew right then, he was the one. We got engaged after 2 years of dating. I kept our relationship private. I didn't post photos. I didn't bring him to family Sunday dinners if I could help it. I wanted something that was just mine. But you can't hide a wedding. The moment the invitations went out, the sabotage began. Jade started helping. She called the florist and told them I had a change of heart and wanted lilies instead of roses. I'm deathly allergic to lilies. Luckily, the florist called me to confirm. Then she tried to fix the seating chart, putting my ex-boyfriend at the head table. My mom told me I was being paranoid. She said, "Riley, she's just excited to finally be a real sister. Stop trying to find drama where there isn't any." I realized then I couldn't win with words. I needed proof. Mark, being the tech genius he is, suggested we use security measures for the wedding weekend. We were renting a massive Airbnb for the bridal party. Mark installed these tiny, discreet nanny cams in the common areas in the kitchen, purely for insurance purposes, he told the owner. But I knew what they were really for. The night before the wedding, we had the rehearsal dinner. It was beautiful, held in a rustic barn in upstate New York. Everyone was drinking wine, giving toasts. Jade stood up, clinking her glass. She gave a speech about how strong I was for overcoming my past, and how she hoped Mark knew what he was getting into. It was a classic Jade move, a compliment wrapped in a barbed wire insult. After the dinner, everyone headed back to the Airbnb. I went to bed early, but Mark stayed up to finish some work. Around 2 in the morning, I woke up to Mark shaking my shoulder. His face was pale. He didn't say a word. He just handed me his tablet. The video was from the kitchen camera, time-stamped at 1:45 a.m. Jade was in the kitchen. She wasn't crying. She wasn't fragile. She looked focused. She had my wedding dress bag laid out on the island. She pulled out a pair of fabric shears from her purse. She didn't shred it. That would be too obvious. Instead, she carefully, methodically, began to snip the threads of the hidden zipper and the delicate lace on the bodice, just enough so that the moment I stepped into it, or moved too quickly, the whole thing would fall apart. Then, she did something that made my blood run cold. She took my something old, a vintage pearl necklace that belonged to my grandmother, and she dropped it into her own purse. She looked up at the ceiling, straightened her hair, and walked out of the room with a smirk that I will never ever forget. I didn't cry. For the first time in my life, I felt cold. "What do we do?" Mark whispered. "We wait," I said. "We're gonna give her the audience she's always wanted." The next morning was chaos. I pretended I hadn't seen the dress. I sent my bridesmaids to get coffee. I asked Jade to help me get ready, alone. When it was time to put on the dress, my mom came in. She was beaming. "You look beautiful, Riley." I stepped into the gown. Jade was behind me, her hands trembling as she reached for the zipper. "Oh, Riley," she whispered. "I'm so nervous for you." She pulled the zipper. And just as she'd planned, the thread snapped. The back of the dress gaped open. The lace tore. Jade let out a horrified gasp. "Oh wait, no, Riley, the fabric. It must have been cheap." "Oh my god, Mom, look, it's ruined." My mom turned around, her face falling. "What? How? We paid $5,000 for that dress." Jade started her act. "I was just pulling it gently. I don't know what happened. I'm so sorry. I'm a failure. I've ruined your day." She sank to the floor, sobbing into her hands. My mom immediately rushed to her. "It's okay, Jade. It's not your fault. We'll find safety pins." "Riley, don't you dare look at her like that. It was an accident." I looked at my mother. Truly looked at her. "Is it always an accident, Mom? Don't start." My mom snapped. Jade is devastated. "Well," I said, reaching for my phone, "maybe this will cheer her up." I had the Airbnb TV hooked up to Mark's tablet. I pressed play. The room went silent. The only sound was the video version of Jade, humming to herself as she methodically destroyed my dress. The snip, snip, snip of the scissors was loud in the quiet room. Then the clear shot of her sliding hiding my grandmother's pearls into her bag. Jade stopped crying. She didn't move. She just stared at the screen, her face turning a ghostly shade of gray. My mom stood up, her hand over her mouth. She looked at the TV, then at Jade, then back at the TV. "Jade?" My mom whispered. Jade didn't answer. I walked over to Jade's purse, sitting on the vanity. I reached in and pulled out the pearls. I held them up. "Is this a misunderstanding too, Mom?" I asked. Did the pearls just trip into her bag? The silence was deafening. Then, Jade snapped. She didn't apologize. She didn't beg. She stood up, her eyes narrowing into something hateful. "You always had everything, Riley. You were the natural daughter. I was just the add-on. You think you're so much better than me. You're nothing without this family." "Actually," I said, my voice calm, "I think I'm finally something, now that I'm done with you." I told her she had 10 minutes to pack her things and leave. My mom tried to intervene, but I looked her in the eye and said, "If she isn't gone in 10 minutes, I'm calling the police with the footage of the theft." "Your choice, Mom." Jade left. She didn't even say goodbye to her dad. The wedding went on. I wore a backup dress, a simple white silk slip I'd bought for the rehearsal, pinned together with my grandmother's pearls. I looked like a mess, but I felt like a queen. When Mark and I stood at the altar, I didn't look at the guests. I looked at him. He winked at me. After the honeymoon, the video somehow found its way onto the internet. I didn't post it. Maybe a disgruntled bridesmaid did. Maybe Mark accidentally left the Cloudlink public. It didn't matter. It went viral. The stepsister saboteur. Jade lost her job at the boutique where she worked. Her perfect friend stopped calling. My dad tried to make me take it down, but I just told him I didn't have the password to the internet. It's been a year now. I don't talk to Jade. My relationship with my parents is polite. They finally stopped calling me dramatic, mostly because the rest of the world has seen the truth. I learned something important that day. You can't stop a person from trying to tear you down, but you can definitely make sure you're recording when they try. Family is the only thing you can count on. But sometimes you have to be the one to do the math. And me? I finally figured out the equation. Riley plus Mark. Jade equals sign happiness. And that, my friends, is no accident.